The following episode is brought to you by Poison City Brewing, proud makers of Durban Poison Cannabis Lager, the beer that invites you to live your poison. Alright, cool guys, how's it going? You got myself, Nasip Izwane, back again with another episode of Sludge Underground. Today I'm very privileged. We've got our sponsor on the podcast. I'm going to let two of the gentlemen who basically, founded, the sponsorship, basically introduce themselves, and then we're basically going to take it from there. This is a really special episode because I feel like it will give the people more insights in terms of who they are as a company and as a brand as well. So let's basically just take it from there. Guys, please introduce yourselves and we'll take the interview from there.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's Graeme here, Graeme Bird. I'm one of the founders of Poison City Brewing. Been in this business now for 5 years. It's been a crazy ride, both in beer and more recently and more specifically into cannabis, which is a real passion of ours. And this is Andre next to me.
Hi, Andre Schubert. I'm the operations and logistics guy in the organization. I'm also founder member, and particularly nice for my job is I brew the beers. I do the recipes.
That is perfect, guys. And obviously, now Graeme, you mentioned something that you said 5 years, been doing this for 5 years. So just walk me through the very beginning. I'd like to think, whenever someone is about to start something, they do a lot of, it's a lot of preparation, it's a lot of research that you have to do. Sort of what went into, starting this up, starting up Poison City.
Yeah, look, I've always been a massive fan of cannabis, and as a consequence of that, I've been aware of the opportunity that exists for cannabis to sort of move from this stigmatized, illegal activity or the use of cannabis into something that I was always confident would become accepted by people and accepted by authorities and regulations. So that's been essentially since the beginning of my adult life, I've been felt that way, and positioning ourselves for the opportunity. So yeah, it started long before 5 years ago, but 5 years ago is when together Andre and myself took the step to actually put our foot down and put the cannabis logo out there.
That is perfect, man. And obviously, Andre, you did say you're in charge of brewing the actual beer. So just walk me through that. What is the whole process, and basically where did that sort of begin for you? Your journey in terms of, because I don't think you just woke up one day and you just randomly knew how to sort of brew this sort of stuff. So where does it start for you?
No, I woke up one day and I did. No, so like Graeme, I've always been a fan of cannabis, unashamedly. But I'm a restaurateur by trade. So pretty much any business I've been involved in as an adult, other than my overseas gallivanting, I'm a traveler and so on, doing any kind of work, has always been in the restaurant industry before this. And I found that there was a synergy between the two, and I'll tell you why. I specifically am addicted, I say, to taste. So in that sense, I believe that anything you make or do, you do to the best of its ability. But in order to get the best taste out of anything, whether it's a drink, whether it's a wine, whether it's food, you have to be simple, and you have to be very, very close to the core of what each ingredient is. Don't try and alter it. So I already had a love for wine. I already had a love for food. Graeme had a love for food and wine as well. And we are both always bemoaning the fact, specifically in Durban, that if we didn't have a craft beer, which we started drinking a lot of, and in my travels I learned a lot about craft, and there they just called it real ale. In England and Germany it's run of the mill. They don't call it craft, but their beer is craft in a sense. I'm not talking about commercial beers, but I'm talking about the right beer, the beer that tastes proper, the one that's treated correctly, and so on. So it was a no-brainer for the two of us. Like I said, we were bemoaning the fact that we were only drinking beers from Cape Town. And that kind of was my switch. I said, we gotta sell and make beers here that are us, because I'm equally proud of what we can do in KZN, and that's kind of the Durban, the Poison City, which is the acronym for, not the acronym, the nickname for Durban, Poison City, came about, and we religiously kept that in mind as we pursued our business, initially without cannabis, of course.
And what I really appreciate from what you said there is, having been in the restaurant business for a very long time, you really appreciate taste. Now, I want you to give me insight to anyone who hasn't tasted, any of your beers. How would you sort of best describe, the taste to them?
Sure. Look, beer has categories much the same that wine has categories and cultivars. So you get white and you get red. And in wine with white and red, we all know there's certain whites that have got separate characteristics, and reds that have certain characteristics, and you can have blends of those so that you get certain characteristics. Now, beer works pretty much the same way. There's two kinds of beers in the world. One is lager and one is ale. Okay, and the differentiating factor between the two is that the yeasts that you use to produce the lager are very different to the yeasts that you use to produce an ale. Now, we all know lager, 95% or 96% of the world drinks lager, but that is a very narrow, very young aspect of beer. Beer's been brewed somewhere between 9,000 and 12,000 years, which is 3 times longer than wine has been made. And if you look at it that way, it's quite scary. And that has always been ales. There, the yeast is natural yeast or yeast that needs to be over around about 10 degrees Celsius to be able to react with sugar to make the alcohol. Whereas a lager can be between 4 and 10 degrees and it can make alcohol. And that suited the Europeans because then they could make lager in cold conditions without heating. Okay, and that made a big difference. And because it's let's call it a cold combination, a less volatile combination. If you look at it chemically, lagers are a hell of a lot more smoother, crisper, more dry, and therefore daytime refreshing. So lagers are really known as a daytime beer. And ales, which is the opposite, are usually thicker, a lot more tasty. They've got a lot more aroma. They often have a lot more hops, which is a secondary flavorant, because to make the beer more bitter, to preserve the beer. That beer is generally not pasteurized like a lager, and it's kind of meant for connoisseurs. So we're really looking white wine, red wine, but we're looking at aged red wine when we're looking at ales through the spectrum. And white wine, we all know, throw in an ice block, drink it cold, very similar. That's when you drink lagers. And the food types that it suits is pretty much the same. So you want red meat with lagers, you want red meat with a deep and strong ale. With a lager, you want pastas, you want pizza, you want the easygoing food.
So then where now does your guys' beer sort of differ from, the whole process with the hops and whatnot? What is your special ingredient?
Okay, so we initially, like I said, we didn't start with a special agreement, but we always had this thing to do it. So we did that a year and a half ago, and we started adding hemp to our beer, which is the Durban Poison Cannabis Lager. And the reason for that is very simple, that hops, which is used to preserve and bitter beer and give it its secondary flavor, is obviously also used in a lager, but they cousins to cannabis sativa. So hops and cannabis sativa are direct cousins, and the same agents that make bitter and flavor in the one make bitter and flavor in the other one. So by changing the two, you can do it. It could be more expensive because generally cannabis is more expensive than hemp, but you can interchange them, and that's the basis behind the taste. That's the extra ingredient. Now, because of law, you can't cultivate hemp in this country, which has got no THC, which is totally basically good for you. We use hemp seeds. And by using the hemp seeds, we're adding omegas, a little bit of CBD, but omegas and antioxidants to the beer. So in a way, you have a healthier beer, but also because of the alcohol content, which is like 4%, it's a low calorie beer. It's 100 calories. So basically, having 3 beers for breakfast will equal a breakfast. There you go. So it's quite a low calorie product. But the difference is the hemp. Yeah,
that is really special. And I want to look at your guys' partnership. How long does it date back? I've gotten sort of an individual perspective from both of you. So you guys coming together to form this, how long back does it sort of date? When did you guys meet? And what do you guys enjoy most about working together? Yeah.
So we've known each other since university days, and hung out a bit in London. I don't know if people still do that regularly, but it was a common move once you finish studying to go and spend some time in the UK and Europe. So that was, and we spent a bit of time there, and then actually when we both ended up back in South Africa at different times, years later, ended up sharing houses together in the Brea in Glenwood. And that went on for quite a few years. So yeah, our relationship goes back a hell of a long time. Initially created through our passionate kind of mutual love for surfing, because we were both into surfing. Andre doesn't get on the surfboard that much nowadays, but we still have that passion. And through our relationship and our friendship, we recognized this opportunity to start a craft beer and a cannabis beverage business. And as I mentioned earlier, that's been for the last 5 years or so. So yeah, lots of time spent doing crazy shit together. And then this has probably been the most crazy shit we've done together.
And what have you sort of learned, working with Andre? What is the one thing or the few things that you feel like, you've gained from this partnership?
He's definitely way crazier than I ever knew him before. But no, the thing that's really important to our brand is his passion. He's got an incredible passion for everything he does, and you could hear earlier when he was describing the different beer categories and what he likes about beer, how deeply that runs. So that's been probably the most important thing.
And Andre, on your side, what have you learned most or rather enjoyed most about working with Graeme? Yeah?
Well, when we started working, I went into pretty much being my own boss. I worked for restaurants as a waiter, which is really your own boss because, you earn your tips and so on. But then I opened my first, second, third restaurant. Graeme, although he initially worked within NGO structures, he then went and worked in normal business structures to do what he does. And what I've learned from Graeme is how to operate and think within a corporate environment, because as much as you like to think you're a little sole trader, you always get to a size where you have to start thinking about bringing in funds, investment, and that is through companies and understanding how companies think and understanding how companies operate, and also bringing in a sense of more critical timing to issues. Because, when you're on your ace, I suppose you own a taxi or you own a restaurant. Yeah, I'll get down to that tomorrow or the next day. What I now know, the second you have that idea, the second you have that thought, you're on it. There's no gap. And that's the pressure that companies bring, but then they also bring bigger rewards, So.
That is perfect. And obviously something you mentioned there, Graeme, about the surfing and your passion for surfing. From the conversation that we've had so far, I do understand that you guys have a passion for cannabis and whatnot. So how much of an influence does the surfing have on your company and on your brand? I see the logo here on these stickers, surfboards and whatnot. So how much of an influence does that have on what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I think certainly it's ingrained into both of our lifestyles. I mean, surfing isn't a sport. People get that confused. Surfing is something that you develop a passion for, that you can do and actually construct your life around it. And it's a big part. So the cool thing about our brand, and Durban Poison specifically, is surfers are also known for being sort of counterculture and doing things differently. And cannabis has always been a big part of the surfing culture. So the two kind of blend together quite nicely. And I think our logo was a stroke of genius to bring the cannabis image into our logo in the form of surfboards, which a lot of people don't realize at first. So it's a great reveal. That's just a cannabis logo. No, hang on a moment, those are surfboards. So it's kind of talking to two elements of the culture of our brand, cannabis and surfing, and how they're sort of intertwined and are a representation of Durban to some extent. I mean, Durban obviously has like a range of reasons people know about us, this beautiful East African city, home to the Zulu nation, King Shaka, etc., but also within a sort of a global international perspective. Durban is really famous for its surfers. It's had world champions. It's got a current world champion, Grant Twiggy Baker, the world big wave surfing champion. So surfing's always been a big part of it. And then Durban Poison. I mean, shit, who hasn't heard of Durban Poison? So that was quite an important sort of combination of factors for us, and something that we're both really passionate and believe in.
And perhaps to just add to that, when we first sat down and we thought about this, all successful brands, I mean, now we're going to quote big numbers, but that's not right. Richard Branson, Virgin. You know, Virgin grew into a big company. Microsoft grew into a big company. But those companies actually espouse the principles of the founders. And because we are both surfers, because we did like cannabis, because we did like taste, all we did is distill what we are into the brand. So it's actually a distillation process. So by meeting us in some way, you will know the brand straight away, and vice versa. You know, you'll drink the brand and you'll kind of taste and feel through the advertising, feel through the logo, that these guys are a lot more gritty, I would imagine, than just a slick little brand that's come off the road. You know, our brand tells you by its name what city it's from. The logo tells you that we surf. The logo tells you that we like cannabis, and it's done in such a naive, simple style. So yes, that's what I'd like to add to that answer. Yeah.
That's perfect, man. And I'm looking at your guys' sort of reach and expansion, you know, beyond Durban. You know, you got links out there in Joburg, Cape Town and whatnot. When we look at how, you know, this all started sort of, or the roots of it, funny considering we're talking about cannabis, but the roots of it, you know, being sort of in Durban, you know, how have people sort of been receiving, you know, your beer, you know, in the other provinces as well? And it actually comes to another question that I want to ask a bit later in terms of international sort of plans. But for now, let's just stick to this one here. Other provinces, how are they sort of, you know, receiving your guys' beer?
Yeah, it's the products available throughout South Africa, and is loved throughout South Africa. In fact, not just in South Africa, but in the surrounding countries, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe. We regularly get pictures of people posting. I don't know if you've heard of the beer app called Untapped. But yeah, for you or your listeners, anyone who's interested, it's an amazing free app you can download, which allows you to, every time you have a beer, is to rate that beer. And all beers are available on Untapped, including ours. And the cool thing for us is if you follow the Untapped app as a brand owner, you can see who's talking about your product, what they're rating it on, and so on. And it's so cool to see it popping up all over South Africa, like, you know, in the far northern provinces, down all the way to the Cape provinces, to everywhere. And so yeah, people are loving it everywhere. There's definitely a passion for cannabis in South Africa. I think we've tapped into something pretty neat.
That was really special, man. And obviously, you know, you did say surrounding countries. Let's look at maybe now, say America, the UK, wherever the case may be. Are there any plans to sort of expanding onto there if you guys haven't already?
Yeah, look, we're aiming at global domination. I mean, that's all. Red Bull's shitting themselves. They keep coming to us and like trying to get us to slow down. Heineken as well. I mean, it's true that there's this like heavy virus going on, but that's actually us. We created the coronavirus because we want people to stop drinking Corona. But yeah, obviously, seriously speaking, with the growth of cannabis, it's not just about South Africa, it's the whole world. The US and Canada are like well advanced, and of course in Europe, and you can smoke a joint in a bar in Berlin for the last 10 years. Prague, in Czech Republic, and like all over the world. Interestingly, Thailand, which one would never think in sort of Asia, people would, or Southeast Asia as well, people would move towards legalizing cannabis. Over there, it's been like the death penalty. And Thailand recently legalized medicinal use of cannabis. So there's huge opportunities globally, and because Durban Poison is so well known, we think there's a great opportunity to leverage off the sort of notoriety and fame of Durban Poison to move this product into the rest of the world. So we get requests weekly from people all over the world, like, how do we get our product there? And we actually busy arranging some shipments today
last night,
to the US. We've already done a container to Australia. So yeah, hopefully small steps, but hopefully we get to that point where we do kick Red Bull's butt and become the true agitator in the beverage space.
So of course you know that Durban Poison, Durban Poison's the original strain. It's pretty much sativa rich. In actual fact, it's almost 100% sativa. So within cannabis, there's two kinds of strain. There's a strain that uplifts you mentally, kind of keeps you awake almost. That's sativa. And then there's indica. Well, we'll get the interviewer to answer that question. That kind of acts on your body, rests you, dulls you down, and there are times that's a good thing. For instance, people suffering from cancer, when they imbibe cannabis in whatever way, it's often indica rich, because their bodies are the things that are suffering. But that very much immediately got noticed by Americans traveling here, because they started wanting to party and dance when they smoked instead of sitting on their asses. So they took it back to California in the early 70s and carried on working with a strain that's predominantly sativa. Now, Durban Poison is one of the most known strains worldwide, as being that everybody understands what it does and where it comes from. And it's one of the top 5 selling strains all over the world. In actual fact, in some places like Colorado, maybe the most popular strain that people go for, because they use it for recreational use and they don't want to, so it's a popular name. So if you launch it in the States in a certain state, it's already a known name, and that's the blessing of it coming from our city, because we're the ones that recognize it.
So and it's an interesting conundrum that the alcohol industry is facing, because especially with sort of Generation Z, millennials before them, people are more informed. So people are becoming more aware of health, and more people, especially from those generations, are saying they don't want to drink alcohol, or they want to drink less alcohol. So big alcohol is going, shit, what are we going to do about this? Well, cannabis is the perfect substitute, because people are also realizing cannabis is more of a medicinal plant. It's actually not harmful for you as previously thought. It's actually good for you. And if there's a way to get high rather than drunk, in a way that you're actually doing something that's positive for your body, well, that's the perfect beverage for people to pivot to from alcohol. So yeah, huge opportunities as and when things move in that direction.
And as the person, I suppose, is doing the recipes, but our thinking together is that you never mix alcohol and THC. There isn't a person out there listening, I'm sure, that's had the greens, if they have smoked, and that's really often comes about by people having drank a bit too much and then decide to smoke. But at the end of the day, I can produce you a beer with 0 alcohol, with maybe 6 will get you properly stoned. You obviously have to have a measure, but where the calorie per bottle is now 50 or 60 calories. Now you're talking about 6 beers to equal a breakfast in your daily intake. So in other words, you can go out, you can party, you can get safely social, and you're not drunk, safely social, and you've taken in, if you've really drunk a lot, you've taken in 300 calories. So now it's also a healthy thing because there's no residual sugar, because alcohol gets its calories from both residual sugar and the alcohol itself. So it's like a double whammy. So you can already almost halve the calorie content of any drink by taking out the alcohol. And then you've got your residual sugar. So if you're looking at a dry white wine or a lager, you literally, without the alcohol, will be looking at maybe 40 to 50 calories for 340 mils. And that's amazing. Yeah.
You guys sure you aren't scientists like part-time, because that is really impressive. Like everything you said there is really special. Guys, since this is a podcast that focuses on, you know, this music scene, you know, the alternative scene and whatnot, I want to know how you guys sort of identify with that. You know, we've seen your pages. Anyone who's gone to your Instagram, they'll see that you guys, as much as there's a lot of surfing, you know, content on there, but you guys have collaborated with a few artists here and there. You know, I've seen a couple of celebrities as well that have, you know, been, you know, sort of interlinked with the brand. So I want to know with you guys, you know, how do you guys identify with the scene, especially, you know, being a podcast that's based in Durban, you know, the Durban scene?
Yeah, you know, the cool thing about Durban, we've always found, is that it doesn't have the glamour of Cape Town or Johannesburg, and unfortunately for us, but fortunately actually, is that it doesn't have the commercial opportunity. So what's happened, like, throughout my life, what I've noticed is that Durban sort of nurtures a creative capability amongst the performing arts and music particularly, that seems to lack the commercialization that you get in other parts of South Africa. And that's what people need. You know, that's the core stuff. That's the cutting edge stuff where people aren't worried about money, but they're worried about their artistic endeavor. And we've loved that about Durban. That's like a core part, I think, of the Durban culture. And we love that as a brand, to foster that and support that, because we think it's a very strong representation of the Durban culture versus the culture you get elsewhere in the country and the world.
Yeah, I mean, we made that decision from day one that, you know, you got to consider who your market is and what you want to focus on. And when we looked at Durban, I don't think this is a generalization. It could be, but I'd like to believe it because it's about us. But we disproportionately, every great band that's come out of this country, if you look at what city they come from and so on, especially on the rock side, I'll get to the underground other side, but on the rock side has been Durban. It was Belleville for a little while, and Belleville still produced good things, but in general, Durban produces a hell of a lot of rock musicians. We produce great artists, and I'm talking about, you know, young and Bali artists. So you'll notice that the Constitutional Court on Constitutional Hill, all the art is by Durban artists or Natal artists. They've got no other artists in that whole Constitutional Court. And if you look at, you know, years ago I DJ'd as part of my jawling and all of that, and I was already working a lot. But I DJ'd at a club called Crash, and Crash had a private lounge for members. And we only played deep house then. And that's when Deep House came onto the scene, we were buying records from Chicago, Detroit, New York. There were some interesting European Deep House things, but we were influenced by that. And I remember that we had to go and get records through a guy called Graeme from House Africa in Joburg. Now, if you look back, when we started DJing, it was just after 94, so clubs were pretty segregated still and so on. And I remember getting these young guys through, and they'd have a battle getting through the door because bouncers weren't even what is the word, intellectualized, maybe a word, or socialized enough to always like be a little bit, you know, discriminatory, but not in that way. The poor oak was just doof, you know, so how do I say it any other better way? But we'd get some young guys coming through, and I mean, it's 20 years later, and I like listening to Joburg House and all those sort of things, and I'm just blown away by the rich house music coming out of this country. So much so, I was listening to a set of a Chicago DJ the other day, And at least 2 of the songs sounded so African. And look, and guess what? They were from Joburg. They now playing our music. So, and in that scene, my personal belief is that it grew in Durban from nothing to where Durban radio stations at the time, Durban Youth Radio now, were just playing deep house. Radio 5 then, or 5 FM, were playing deep house. You could go to London, you could go to Germany, you can go to America. You only got deep house on digital radio stations that were in a suburb. You couldn't get it as a national. So we kind of world leaders, and I really do believe that Durban had a hell of an influence on deep house, and it shows all the time. The guy drives our van. They've got a band. They've got an outfit, lifestyle or whatever they called. Indie approached us right in the beginning, and they sort of let's call it a tribal rap band, or South African rap band. So we immediately went for looking after people like that, even if it's what we could afford was beers and banners and a hat or whatever, a cap, is because we definitely support that about Durban. That's us. We came back, we went overseas, we wanted to do 2 things: surf certain spots you're never going to see, or you wanted to go and see a band you were never going to see. And we brought that back, and we want to carry on with that. So.
That is really special, guys. And we're almost at the end. I want to know, you guys, 2019 was a very good year for you guys. For anyone who's been sort of observing what you guys have been doing, I understand that you guys were awarded and given a certain accolade, so I want you guys to sort of dive into that. And also, I think this was around the beginning of the whole sponsorship, when we had one of the bands that came from Joburg. And I remember around that time you guys mentioned that you had a billboard that was up the freeway there. So I want you guys to sort of these things that you guys keep achieving, did you guys sort of foresee all of that happening 5 years back, and how did that sort of make you feel with all these awards and accolades that you guys keep achieving, and these milestones that you guys keep hitting?
Yeah, look, one thing I realized, and as Andre mentioned, I had quite a long period of being in the corporate world. When you start your own business, it is 1,000,000 times harder than you could ever imagine. So no, there's no way that these things just come easily and you think, oh yeah, just let it happen. You work your ass off, and it's a bumpy road. So when you do achieve something like getting an award for your product, you really, really appreciate it, because it doesn't come easily. So yeah, it's been a humbling process, and achieving success isn't something that comes easily. That's for damn sure.
No, that's really cool, man. And obviously we're in 2020 now. I want you guys to sort of let us know what your plans are moving forward with the brand in 2020 and beyond as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we got to wait for legislation to change before we can make a non-alcoholic beer with THC. But we know that opportunity exists overseas right now for the name, as well as for that. There are states in America, there are certain countries like Canada that allow drinks to be sold with THC and not alcohol. So right now we are bedding down into that to expand in order to keep our business going and our product going. We are actively looking for investors from those quarters, so that we can go and produce it there and almost reverse it backwards, until our legislation changes to produce what we ideally want to produce. And that's having a drink that allows people to really, really enjoy themselves socially, like alcohol does, but with a lot better health associated to it. Yeah.
That's really perfect. And obviously, guys, to close it off, where can people sort of get in touch with you guys? Your social media pages. This is your chance to sort of just let them know where they can, check you guys out online and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, social media, Poison City Brewing, and on Instagram. And yeah, we've got a good following. We've got over 30,000 people, some cool contributions and comments, and it's a cool way to keep the brand alive. But another cool way to check us out is on our website. So www.poison.city. There's some cool stories in there, blogs that we post, blog pieces. So yeah, and we'd love to connect yours to there as well. So that's a good way to keep in touch with the brand.
Yeah, we're connected, and also we have been unashamed who we are. So on the contact us page, our numbers and our emails are there. If you want to talk to us directly, we're available on that www.poison.city. Very easy.
Listen, Graeme, Andre, thank you guys so much for allowing me to come through here and, conduct this interview. I learned so much from you guys, so much wisdom, and I really hope that just going forward, things just keep getting better for you guys. And yeah, so guys, you've heard it here first on Sludge Underground. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. It will go up on iTunes, Sludge Underground on Facebook. We are Sludge Underground, and on Twitter at Sludge031, and on Instagram at Sludge Underground. Episodes also go up on SoundCloud. We are Sludge Underground Podcast. So please guys, tune in, let us know what you guys thought of this episode. It's a really special one, and yeah guys, until next time, stay safe from the coronavirus, and we'll see you guys next time. Cheers for now.